Star Trek. I'm on a... I started out as a stargazer, like Jean-Luc on a stargazer. I'm Jean-Luc Skywalker, and akin to Darth Vader, like him as a kid on a pod racer. I shot for the moon like a locked phaser. On Pandora, do I want fame? Sure, insatiable is my dark nature. Missed the mark, never hit the target. Like stormtroopers, I shot lasers. Obscurity is a cell. I'm a gold press platinum bar raiser. I'm a rhyming nerd. Bars like I'm cutting a pie in third. That's 3.33333 to infinity T. It's math, just do it. Nike shirt. When I write a verse, I fight the urge to rhyme the words that might occur to my mind at first. To find the words, search my mind for words. The divine emerges. When it comes to the rhyme, I'm not uncertain. Jesse Breaking Bad news to Heisenberg. Hold up, Jesse, my name Breaking Bad. Uncertain. Heisenberg. There's levels to the game, so I'm stepping my game up. Stepping till I get to the highest perch. I ratchet it up when I get down, like a psycho nurse on a flight to Perth. Hold on, you know when I spit a flow that anything is possible. So with these syllables, I'm multi-diverse. Transport you to another dimension. Should I talk to Scotty or Miles first? They say, goddamn, no one raps like you. Middle-aged rapper, but data too. Did I mean data? Yeah, that's true. That was facts, data. Ooh, say I can't rap, I just laugh at you. I'm Picard, you're Kirk, cause you capping too. When I get on the track and I snap, it's through. You wanna rap God, then that's my cue. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. I'm on a... Used to watch Gianna as a boy. The counselor brought massive joy. When I grow up, I don't need Trojans. I'ma be Greek, I'm sacking Troy. ZZZ. Wait, I meant to say that I'm gonna take that beta Z. Another way to say I'm gonna take my beta bed. Cause you can read all the thoughts in my crazy head. Cause my warped mind's about to get warp drive. Feel like Worf with a sword and a sword fight. It's a great day, so you're gonna short eye. Cameras is sick, my flow when it's Borg like... Damn, cassette flow, these rappers are Jake, I'm Captain Cisco. I'm sonning these kids, I'm bad at pistol. Not getting a tenth of the cash I get, yo. When it comes to killing mics, you're 7 of 9, I'm William Riker. #1. You're blind to greatness, someone find Jordy and steal his visor. Sometimes I'm like a Ferengi that's panicking, chasing the fame. Am I chasing the Latinum? Who wants the fame? Fame isn't happening, basically bonjour and hate a Kardashian. Sour grapes taste like whoa, like Romulan ale when I drank it slow. Get ripped like the fabric of space and time when ironically said make it so. I just wanna get a little bit of money, little bit of fame from the lyrics that I scribble on the page. But these kids are looking at me like, yeah, you can rap, but the fact is your ass middle age. Do you think I can get a pass with a track, be a slap if I rap with the slangs? No cap, talking Jean-Luc is the only time I ever use capped in a phrase. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. Star Trek. I'm on a Star Trek.
Course fixed, warp 6, Morn sits, living witness on a warship, rolling snake leaf cause I'm a Norch quick, space seed, Gorn strengths, isolytics for the Borg blitz, even the coldest brain don't wanna face me, I'm a wormhole but you're an orb glimpse, living Grathor, lyrics Feklar, I'm a rapping demon, you reject lore, it's a different world and I am Captain Freeman's. More flight, in engineering where the core's bright. I am Enterprise D, soaring nights. You can torture me, but there are 4 lights. I am Worf to meet you for a sword fight. Last stand, course plight. A mass strand, but with more sight. We are blood wine, you are Coors Light. Spore drives, black alert, eugenic war splice. Keep your force height, I will battle slash you with a coarse knife. My mill moves at a timeline jump, you to Enterprise J. Forbidden to fate in the state of the galaxy where progenitor tech was invented by Gray. If the Nexus rift is a massive tear, and whole generations are trapped in there. Rap is rare, wants a front row seat in the captain's chair. Long sleeve gold that I have to wear. OGTOS with a classic flair. If Shax is the active bear, I'm walking through the contour packless there.
Yeah.
Blue dream reveals me as a groove fiend, while our progress is tied up like a shoestring. He's too mean when describing the system's flaws. Dismiss it all as the inside of the prison walls. Rip the guards as fat cats and pistol hogs, while we have the strength to lift the star. Vision jarred, similar to battle haze. Trying to run either this away or that away. Running rings in my Saturn maze. It's akin to the weather of Seattle on a Saturday. How can I take a stand living in the United States of imagination land? Trying to make the band, making statements that you hate and that you can't defend. An innocent gaze through the mind of an ancient man. So what? They told me I was right the whole time, but then I woke up. Damn. What I see, can I be? It flees sanity. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? As curious of a being as me, I had to see. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? Please answer me. MC's fans a beat. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? The culprit is rogue, ego, casualty. But is it me
dream having me.
Hereditary light child, ever pursued by the sedentary lifestyle. Right now it feels like I've been asleep forever. It even felt like I was sleepwalking through each endeavor. Bite down, this'll only hurt a second. Kinda like the first time that you heard the record. A double-edged sword strike when you least expect it. To protect everything just to be infected. Like how? Asleep late, trying to escape the dreamscape. Appease fate as a pebble in a deep lake. Two skis through a weak wake. Quantum leap great. Ancient steps trying to retrace. A street race at type 3 only halfway. As a rhyme lord that's walking a lonely pathway. Type 4 war portal in the cache. I packed a state, but then I woke up.
What I see, can I be? It flees sanity. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? As curious of a being as me, I had to see. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? Please answer me. MC's fans a beat. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? The culprit is rogue, ego casualty. But is it me having the dream or the dream having me?
A soldier with the rifle cocked. Back at home, known to soar like a psychonaut. I forgot he's alone in a familiar place. The homegrown battle zone that he will escape. Sniper shot. Wake up late, show up naked to fist fight. It's all fun and games till you wake up in this life. Slack and skate, then a rush to try to graduate. Mad at fate, in a hurry to procrastinate. He's got the courage to elaborate. It's kinda blurry, I almost got to meet him, but I had to wait. Impassioned gray, cast away on the astral plane. Stashed away experience to be ascertained. The past remains as lessons of another. Now peering through the looking glass, we could have been as brothers. A massive chain of two lives broken. He asked to trade, then I was woken.
What I see, can I be? It flees sanity. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? As curious of a being as me, I had to see. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? Please answer me. MC's fans a beat. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? The culprit is rogue, ego casualty. But is it me having the dream or the dream having me? What I see, can I be? It flees sanity. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? As curious of a being as me, I had to see. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? Please answer me. MC's fans a beat. Is it me having the dream or the dream having me? The culprit is rogue, ego casualty. But is it me having the dream or the dream having me?
Now you see, you stand over there and you think you know, well you don't. I'm a new man. I've known you for over 10 years. And you just like these people. You're a puppet. You think I care what you think? You think I care what all these people think? I don't. Some of these people love you and some of these people hate you. But either way, you care. I don't.
I swear that y'all won't like what I've become. So if I pull up and my eyes look made of glass, you better run. Before you fix your face to pop off something slick, just hold your tongue. My ass too fast, I whip that ass, then run them pockets for your funds. Dummy, I don't even want your money. I'm feeling like you got too chummy. Only know you from this rap shit. You mistook us for some buddies. Just because you know my mans don't mean that you won't catch these hands. Remind me of that conversation that ended up in the ambulance. Know this shit ain't happenstance. You know this what the fuck you said. And if this been some years ago, you might have ended up fucking dead. So fuck you and that shit you selling. Plus your type is known for telling. If I beat that ass, then go to court, I'll end up as a felon. Don't push me now, it might be worth it. Nobody said that life was perfect. Heard you practice MMA, I'm down to find out if you learned it. Personally, I think you're trash. Chrome man in karate class. Wrap the yellow belt around your neck until your life is past.
Live from the Blue Wave headquarters. This is the Funky Bandito speaking. And we're just about clear for liftoff. So if you're ready, buckle up. We're about to take you on an interdimensional journey. Time and space. As I step out of the fourth dimension, I leave behind my physical form so I can relieve the tension. Now we've entered a new plane of existence, set a course a million light years, a small distance. Yeah, you guessed it, I'm the pilot. Intergalactic pirate, undetectable to ultraviolet. And I'm bumping hip-hop, not disco. Traveling through deeper space than Cisco. With my co-pilots, Mr. Andre and G-Squared. The unprepared best to beware, but don't be scared. We show mercy to the spineless, spread kindness. And our songs, timeless. So if you really think you want a battle, you must be deep in the sleep with the sheep and the cattle. We can't be rattled. And even if you trace our rhymes, you'll find we exist outside of space and time. Space and time. Space and time.
projecting, master connections. I had a brain blast and I crashed in your sector. Look to my past, you can see my ancestors play the same role every movie like Hector. We can get groovy or we can get extra. Wanna speak to me, you better know the method. All you gotta do is ask the right questions. Traveling man, most deaf, I've been impressive. I've been around the world, but I know there's more out there in the atmosphere that we tour. Beyond them clouds and tall skyscrapers, I really wanna fly like planes made out of paper. I never waver, unless they cutting up a check. I'm an innovator, on my way to SpaceX. I collect my thoughts and I give them to the universe. I don't stop even if it hurts, I gotta make it first. Moonwalk, then I pave the dirt. They all said it's amazing work. I wanna break the curse, set it off and retain the thirst, and make plays out of space when I leave the earth. Space and time.
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 Space, 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 space and time.
Ancient mind, the strangest when we break design. Grace divine, the phases, but each face is mine. When you trace his lines, be safe inside. If the phrase aligns, seek your colleagues who need space and time. Like the fabric unified, we can keep it that way or destructive, you decide. Utilize dimensions mixed with increments, ruthless lives, attempting to make sense of it. Next force, Gray, Day, and J. If the beat is the court, we Steph, Clay, and Dre. Too open to miss, too long for us to get up a shot. You know that we sick, they spit a flow, we literal hawk. Stop. This is aerial coverage. This isn't just volume explored, this is area covered. My rhymes are just soil to bury you under. We're from a battle class that never knew comfort. Just try to sleep on us, we dare you to slumber. Through space and time.
Space and time.
Space and time. Yo.
Space and time.
Check.
Space and time.
Space and time.
Space and time.
Space, 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 space.
They crossed the line, this is a straight up violation. Now they force my hand, there's no other course but annihilation. The house of extropy is guilty of evil sacrilege and dabbling in science that threatens the very way we live. See, this is not the first time, and this is not the first house, and this is not the first fight. We had to go and stomp out, we gotta take the scorched earth route and scatter atoms to the wind, so we'll be sure there'll never be some doubt. But don't be overconfident, these extropians can be lethal. Their weapons are many, and for that reason, we might be equals, but none can match our savagery, our parallel tenacity. We've killed entire bloodlines with some consider tragedy, but I think that it has to be this way, and this saves the fabric of reality and thus paves the way for the universe to carry out a cycle. The ultimate end of everything makes our life vital.
Speak for the community. As extropian, the entropics act with impunity. Foolishly, they think they have the jurisdiction, and this notion we're beholden is the purest fiction. Each one of their lords has a weapon of mass destruction plus an enemy horde. They're called reapers, after death creatures, and I don't think that we have to respect either. We have the technological superiority and just enough intelligence to disrupt their order scheme. They're sorta mean, so keep your distance, and their defense is keen. Your shot attempts need precision. Cosmic progress is forbidden. Our study of unification isn't malicious, and they're trying to stop it. Why? So every option's on the table. They'll talk about the battle in stories, fables, and tales.
So rejoice because the battle will be glorious. The bloodlust, berserker rage, you bring the storm with us. This is the norm for us, crushed them till they want to dust. Left to the extropians, we will be victorious.
We don't want a war, they're forcing us. They lust for battle, they don't even care if their war is just. Mourn for trust if war's on the cusp. The entropics will fall, we will be victorious.
So rejoice because the battle will be glorious. The bloodlust, berserker rage, you bring the storm with us. This is the norm for us, crushed them till they want to dust. Left to the extropians, we will be victorious.
We don't want a war, they're forcing us. They lust for battle, they don't even care if their war is just. Mourn for trust if war's on the cusp. The entropics will fall, we will be victorious.
weapon was forged inside a dying sun. Its infinite mass can never be measured by tons. It warps space-time, colliding with the things that passes, ravaging planets, obliterating all of the smashes. Clashes cause the quantum light flashes. Immense output of energy, the heat index is massive. Cosmic warlord addicted to drawing swords. An avatar that eats stars and leaves galaxies torn. I'm bioengineered to handle all these conflicts, swarming through the vacuum with at least 1 million starships. World split in half from the force of my wrath. Death to all extropians, they soaked in the bloodbath. Hammer versus the staff, destruction is our path. We arrived and collide on both sides, they get smashed. Order the attack, these cannons don't hold back. One blast makes the hull of their ship just go crack. Disorder, raise the flag for the slaughter. Decimate our enemies and everything they thought of. Overwhelming force till we knock them off course. None is safe when we engage in celestial wars. It's disorder, no defense against the horror. Everybody dies, so we leave no one to mourn ya. Overwhelming force till we knock them off course. None is safe when we engage in celestial war.
Yeah, war trumpets for the poor hunted. My only purpose in combat is to express the gore function. More umbrage taken by these slavers. Me, I'm more offended by their able-bodied raiders. More ships than you can count. We run out of ammo before we get through the amount, so we'll draw them out. Deploying every force against our enemy. Engaged in a war with Lord Entropy. I know him. He leads his troops in for answers. I know I'll have to face him and watch out for the hammer. Watch out. The battle cry will make a heart shatter. At least 1 million reapers versus simple star mappers. We'll take those odds and teach you to never underestimate the extropians, cause they go hard. So raise the shields. You either gonna bet on our unbeaten technology or take the field. It's unification defended by 2 million spaceships. Victory so close you can taste it. Every ship, every lord will be vanquished when it comes to celestial war. It's unification defended by 2 million spaceships. Victory so close you can taste it. You best be warned. None of this is safe if these 2 houses engage in celestial war. Tune into extropians on the losing end. Might be my last time to teleport to the moon again.
Too soon to grin, but we're expecting to win. Defenses getting shredded, they know their end will begin. That's we descend.
If I can make it to the base, then I'll initiate. It could destroy them all or create an entry gate.
It crossed my mind that Grey has nothing to lose. Initiating unification, so that's what I know he would choose.
Using the hyper staff, I triggered the final sequence. No one knows I'm in the lab, they'll have to find a cheated.
I'm suddenly heated, recalling all of his secrets. I know where he would hide, so I separate from the fleet ships. Hover the laboratory, jump off from like 100 stories.
Only a dead man would crash my lab with no type of warning.
Rise from the rubble, determined that I'ma stop this plot.
Who would dare show their face here like they call the shots?
Five mass extinctions waiting on that 6th one. And if and when the next come, then maybe they'll be all done. What will be the catalyst? Will climate change establish it? Or will they kill each other with their nukes and all their battleships? Dying from embarrassment of being disagreeable monkeys. Ensures their banishment. I wonder will they vanish quick or linger on for centuries? Grasping at the last straws and memories. Huddled in their masses as they slowly freeze. Peace talkers, in reality they warmongers. Gun-toting, anger addict species full of death stalkers. Separated consciousness, they think outside the natural order. But all the while they are just animals prepared for the slaughter. Petty misanthropes with petty dreams and petty hopes. Seems the furthest they will go is peeping through their telescopes. Float among the stars in this planetary ghetto. I wonder when the day will come when finally they let go. Look at all these humans, what they think they doing. Completely unaware that they've been marked for execution. Falling all to ruin, for power they're pursuing. They're choosing a straight path that's leading them to Ragnarok. Look at all these humans, what they think they doing. Completely unaware that they've been marked for execution. Falling all to ruin, for power they're pursuing. They're choosing a straight path that's leading them to Ragnarok.
I am the Black Plague, my tactics are medieval. The wave of death and destruction that crash into the people. I have to be lethal. As a biotic crisis, I have the power to seize you and leave your planet lifeless. A damaged tyrant that won't quit until man's panic is silenced. Remove the cancer of human with violence. What happens when society collapses? I turn into hopeless fear and dive into the masses. They try to plead like their species hasn't been next. Like I care about the race and religion of insects. It's the apocalypse. You couldn't escape the doom on a rocket ship. The peak of humanity, I'm the opposite. An obstinate pocket of creatures I'm gobbling, reducing them back into stardust as I conquer them with a monster hymn. Their dominance is an afterthought, submerged in the fluidity of a cyclical flow as Ragnarok. All these humans, what they think they doing, completely unaware that they've been marked for execution, falling all to ruin, for power they pursuing, they choosing a straight path leading them to Ragnarok. Look at all these humans, what they think they doing, completely unaware that they've been marked for execution, falling all to ruin, for power they pursuing, they choosing a straight path leading them to Ragnarok. Yeah. Yo. In the end, I'll be just beginning, raining flames down from the heavens, fire dousing many. War dirge, complete destruction with 4 words. The house of great, now it's your turn.
Just know that I exist in every clenched fist and angry word, destructive thought and hateful verb, meaning every action that's ever occurred that brings them ever closer to the heartbeat beating slower, to the time their body's slower than the hearse where I'm the chauffeur like a supernova.
Over 9 million species, blown into a vacuum overnight by just speaking. A completely avoidable fate, but this was the path that humans were reported to take. Great.
Blast wave, the day I come while I stroll among the ashes and burnt out buildings of a world not built to last. And howl out in laughter at the cost of this disaster. Let me welcome you to Ragnarok. There is no hereafter. Look at all these humans, what they think they doing, completely unaware that they've been marked for execution, falling all to ruin, for power they're pursuing. They're choosing a straight path that's leading them to Ragnarok.
Look at all these humans, what they think they doing, completely unaware that they've been marked for execution, falling all to ruin, for power they pursuing, they choosing a straight path leading them to Ragnarok. So when I switched over to the Majestic side, I had to do a bunch of stuff. And then I realized that I wanted to do something slightly different with this, and ended up in my head just kind of going through my normal routine of streaming. So I may end up doing this sort of OBC introduction again at some point in the next week or so, just with the information, but feels like a stream. So welcome to everybody out there. Hopefully we get a little bit more traffic in here. It's always interesting when I move over from one channel to another how the algorithms treat us. So we'll see, but like I don't get my chats on this side. Like, it's weird. Things just are strange. I had to pull the old. Oh, that sucked. Okay. Yeah, I had to pull the old browser stream or whatever it's called. It's not native. I don't have my number up there, so I don't know. I might end up just using my OBS for Majestic and my Streamlabs for my Greydon Square stuff, just so that it doesn't, once I set something, it stays there. Because this, I don't know if I can do that. But anyway, I wanted to do this stream, and I'm gonna do it again, like I was talking about earlier. But I wanted to do this stream about something that I've been working on, and that my partner in rhyme, my brother from another mother, my tag team partner, Tombstone the Dead Man Lord Entropy. We have been working on this for, it's about over a year now. I mean, really, if you think about it, this goes all the way back to the beginning of what we kind of started this story and this comic book company to talk about, right? To tell stories about. And that had to do with this idea of multiple realities and answering certain questions that required a level of artistic freedom to answer. So for me, it's a long time coming, I'm gonna jump in your office just in case you decide you want to pop in and say what's up. But I had been thinking about OBC pretty much my whole life. I would argue it goes back to when I first started questioning religion. A lot of what I was questioning had to do with this idea of what is the likelihood that I just happen to be in the right circumstances at the right time to experience life, as opposed to some other reason as to why reality is the way that it does. And when you ask those questions, you leave yourself open for concepts like the concept we're going to talk about today, Lord Entropy. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you know what? It's my fault. I have you in the wrong output. All right, try it now.
Testing 1, 2.
Yeah. Peace.
Yeah. Peace.
What up, man?
Oh man, I'm here for the OBC.
Oh, me too. Me too. I showed up for OBC as well. You know what's funny is this. I said it in the opening. I don't know how much of it you caught, but
Oh yeah, I caught it.
okay. So this goes back to the very, very beginning of our sort of philosophical discussions, because people don't know. Like we have these crazy philosophical discussions about life and the nature of reality and nature and
All the
that
time.
stuff all the time. So it was almost natural once we understood that that's where we could kind of push each other artistically and creatively, that a
Right.
story was going to come out of that. But what was your first sort of questions about multiple realities and how that affects how you write, being that you are the chief editor of Majestic Comics?
So the one thing about stories that deal with multiple realities that was always intriguing to me was your ability to take essentially the same character and put them in different situations, give them different personalities, and work out how the results of that would be, right? The problem, though, typically with a lot of multi-verse stories is that there's a bunch of hand-waving that takes place and very little in as far as consistency. And I feel like consistency actually helps the story, right? As long as there's a set of rules that you inform the reader of beforehand, they then are willing to suspend disbelief because, oh yeah, they did say that could happen in the story. They already established that. I think what you find in a lot of fiction is while people do create the rules for like the world that they're creating, they don't necessarily create the rules for a multiversal fiction universe where these things can happen here. And to my knowledge, we are the first to have done that to the extent that we've done it. And one thing I love about OBC the most is I can pull so many stories from out of it that it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
It's one of the great like story generator mechanisms
yeah,
that I know of, and it also so happens that we invented it, and it's like I don't know how much of it has been inspired by some of the things. I hate to say invented it. I would say that we sort of articulated it in this way, but this is not a new
Agreed.
concept, right?
No, not at all.
The
not at all.
concept of what we're talking about. I think the only thing that we have kind of postulated is that all realities are equally true and false. I've never heard anybody say that.
I've never
shit.
heard anyone say that either.
Yeah,
never heard
that
anyone
seems
say
to be ours. But I continue. Your origins?
Yeah, so when we decided to do the comic book, you guys got to realize that from the very beginning, this was going to be a reality hopping thing. Once we got rid of that very first concept that we had, which was very loose and kind of all over the place, and we decided to reform, reshape, and restructure what we were doing, it was always going to be this way. The trick of it, though, was that we created the characters first before we came up with OBC. And then we created that block of reality. That's what we refer to universes as, reality blocks. We created that block of reality. And then from that, everything else kind of just like spawned as far as the idea is concerned. And over the course of that time, this, our theory of everything started to take shape. And even like now, it informs new parts of the story as well as the previous parts of the story. Like it's all encompassing. And I think you guys are gonna like it because just the amount of stories we can tell from it and from a certain perspective, I think the readers are gonna love it. They're gonna love it. It's like a guidance to a lot of the stuff that we do.
Yeah,
how we create characters.
I think it informs my writing every day. Literally every single day, there's not a moment that OBC doesn't come up. I'll be talking with my homies in like gaming channels, and I'll be like, "Oh shit, I just found some crazy shit." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I'm working on this OBC shit." They're like, "Well, tell me." And you know, I totally understand that for a lot of people, this is so in the weeds of existential philosophy that this is not even like fun for them. But for us, it's incredibly entertaining and enjoyable. But for me, it's like it allows for the way that I see reality, which is a very fluid sort of viewpoint, because I know that I don't know
everything.
I give everything potentiality. And at the root of OBC, it's potentiality. It goes to answer what I consider the greatest question of all time. Does everybody in the chat want to take a stab at what I believe the greatest question of all time? I'm not going to say it. I'll give you about a couple of minutes. You can put it in the chat. What is the greatest question of all time? OBC answers that. Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's so fascinating to me is that OBC answers the greatest question of all time. If you can think of a greater question, maybe OBC isn't that important.
Right.
But to me, I cannot think of a greater question. And Honey Dragon, you're totally correct on that. So do you want to get into the sort of foundational
let's start we might as well start at the beginning.
Okay.
Out of this.
Okay. So I'd say right now this version is actually on, I'd say we're about closer to 5.7 than 5. You know what I saw for today?
What's that?
Causality.
Ooh.
Yeah. Basically I wrote causality in the Omniverse is, oh, by the way, when I say I wrote, this is me and AI bouncing my ideas and refining my ideas. So when I say I wrote this, it's basically me structuring this, sort of giving it rules and allowing AI to like falsify what I'm thinking and then refining that in my own language. So I just want to be everybody clear, like as I read this, you know, think about how many iterations it probably took me to get to this point. But causality in the Omniverse is a fascinating and complex concept, given that each reality block operates under its own set of rules and logic. Now, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead. We said we're going to start at the beginning, but I wanted to explain this to him because he hasn't seen it yet, and it's going to tie back to what this sort of overarching or overarching idea actually is. So in OBC, causality isn't an omniversal constant, but rather a flexible principle that adapts to the unique properties of each block. This means that the relationship between cause and effect, which is causality, can vary wildly from one reality to another, creating a rich tapestry of casual interactions across the omniverse. So what does any of that mean, right? Let's go back to the foundational concept. So OBC, Omniversal Block Cosmology. introduces the Omniverse as an all-encompassing structure containing a myriad of blocks, each representing a unique reality, universe, or multiverse, or nested reality, or, you know, whatever type of reality you could conceive of, it is within this concept. The concept invalidates somewhat conventional notions of a single universe or even a multiverse, because even multiverses can be contained within a single block. So it implies a level of complexity and diversity that is, in my opinion, the upper level of cosmological theory of everything, right?
Right.
And the thing about OBC that I think is very foundational in when Honey Dragon had answered my question from earlier, which is, what is the greatest question of all time? In my opinion, my own opinion, I don't know how, I can't speak for Lord Entropy or anybody else. My opinion is the greatest question of all time is, why is there something rather than nothing? That is I can't think of anything. I mean, you know, people will say, well, is there a God, or how did the universe begin, or you know, but it's like, why is there anything at all? That really, really bothers me. And it bothers me because my actual theory about reality is far more terrifying than omniversal block cosmology.
Right.
So it's like you think about that. But Dan Hope says, I love how organized that looks. Is that form, if that form is ever complete, will you release it? We plan on releasing it as like a book. Yeah, in volumes. Yeah. I mean, there's so much, bro. Like, we've been working on this for
shit.
I mean, really, if you think about it, we've been working on it for like a decade. But we've been articulating it for the last year and some change, maybe 2 years.
Right. And basically cataloging it and recording it. And I'm telling you guys, like, just as somebody that writes fiction, and Greydon to tell you, my whole everything that I wake up to do is to write fiction and to create characters and story arcs and all this. The one thing I love, like I said, about OBC is that it has like a vast multi-reality structure, because that allows for limitless storytelling potentials across diverse settings.
Yeah.
So I don't have to, if I feel like writing in a horror universe, right? Horror block, I can write in that horror block. If I feel like writing in something that's completely alien to everything we know here, I can just go into that block.
Yeah.
You know, and it's every bit as true for our story as any of the other things that we wrote, because it exists in its own block. It supports a wide range of characters. I'm talking everything from godlike entities to like little mortal whatever. I could completely use the same thing to write stories about, you know, these superhuman characters, and then I could write a sitcom, family sitcom, right, in another universe over here. Like, it's I love it.
Yeah. It's interesting because we went and defined the concept of like gods and you know, all the way up to what we believe are the sort of higher order entities in the Omniverse. But within OBC, it doesn't argue that there is a single architect or master of the Omni on
it's
at
impossible.
The largest scale.
It's impossible. It's impossible for OBC for there to be a single entity that knows everything about the Omni. It's impossible. The Omni is infinite.
Yeah, I mean, and I would even argue it's greater than infinite. You know, there
are a lot of infinities.
Yeah, there's a concept in OBC that it's like literally the next concept after you introduce people to the concept of the blocks, right? Where you have these blocks of reality and they are contained within these boundaries that are defined by some way that distinguishes them one from another. Right. But then you get into this numerical scaling hierarchy, which we kind of developed, which is this idea that there's a value greater than infinity.
Right.
And so that you could have all the infinities you want, and you can say there could always be a greater infinity. Yeah, but there's a single omni, and it contains all the room you need for all the infinities, right? Omni in OBC is the apex value of totality, surpassing even the greatest infinities. OBC posits that there are infinities and eternities that are quote unquote real to the blocks of which they are native. However, all infinities and eternities are of less value than the omni. If the small value, or if the small infinite is a container for finite and transfinite values and quantities, and large infinities are containers for small infinities and every other value worth less than those, then omni contains all infinite, transfinite, and eternal values. There is no infinity greater than omni. In OBC, to speculate so would be to invalidate the sort of concept of it, and basically it would be in the same way of saying like the value of 3 is greater than the value of it places a single value above all the infinity that could possibly exist. Sorry, you guys, I got cotton mouth right now, but but it says the gap between the greatest infinity and omni is greater than the gap between a finite value and the largest infinity. And since there really is no largest infinity, the gap between the largest infinity and omni is that much more vast. And so that's the concept that we kind of created. So in OBC, you could say, oh, there's an infinite amount of infinities. That's great. Where do they fit?
Right.
And so omni is the value in which the infinities sit. And no matter how big you want to come up with, there's always room, because omni as a value is greater than the largest infinity. So the numerical scaling hierarchy is something fundamental to OBC. I'm gonna go get something to drink real quick. Lord Entropy, you want to take over for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of distill a lot of this down. So when you think of first the Omniverse, that's like a vast, all-encompassing structure which contains infinite realities, or blocks as we call them. It's the totality of existence. Like, it's beyond just one universe or even a multiverse. So then the blocks. These are the individual realities within the Omniverse. Each one of these has their own physical laws, logic, and truths. And they can range from like entire universes to smaller pocket dimensions. Then you have this energy source called quintessence, right? Mm-hmm. This is like the fundamental substrate of reality. It exists in quantized increments of what's the word I can use? Positive potentiality. That's it. Like, it's the essence that underlines all existence and can be manipulated to alter reality, right? You have bleed space, concepts like bleed space.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, like this is like regions between the blocks. They contain like lesser concentrations of quintessence and a bunch of unique phenomena there. Like, it kind of serves as a buffer or a transition zone between realities. And a lot of these things that we came up with, specifically, we came up with them to serve the story. While there'll be other issues, titles that deal with other things, they still have some connection to OBC, either in how we define the characters there, or how we can find what we define the conditions there, right? But OBC will always be just underneath the surface of all of the stories that come from Majestic, even with other titles that are not written by us, right?
Yeah, no, that's well said. I think even if you decide you want to write a story, and you use sort of OBC as a map of like, oh, I could just create this reality here.
Yes.
And my story fits,
Absolutely. It's very flexible.
I want to go back to quintessence. We were talking about, or you had kind of just brought it up briefly as one of the foundational concepts. And it is truly like, I dubbed it the binding potentiality, right? Which is this concept that is one of the few things that are truly omniversal, is the binding potentiality. the only thing that could even allow for for there to be something is if there was the potential to be something. And I think this is what allows the possibility for the blocks of reality to even have a chance, right? If you think about it, there's going to be some realities that occur just by the values of different things that are potential related. These are going to be things like the conscious potentiality value, or the amount of quintessence, or the quantum signature, or the temporal mechanics, or the meta nature of the block, if it has an apex entity or not, right? Some blocks have gods, some blocks don't have gods. You know what I mean? Like, some of the gods are polytheistic gods, some of the gods are a singular apex entity, right? And so, but you have to have the potentiality for all of that.
I'm laughing at Sean.
I'm laughing at Sean too. So yeah, quintessence is interesting. We call it Q energy. It's been known as quintium. It's been known as quintessence. Every reality is going to call it something different. It is not going to be something that every reality will kind of learn about, but
or even know,
about. But some of them, obviously, there's a near infinite amount of ones that do, and that's where we kind of tell our story.
And also, if we reference back to issue 0, Gray speaks on quintessence. He doesn't give it a full-throated explanation in that, because we're working our way up to that, but he does mention the quintessence energy. As a matter of fact, I believe also in the council scene in issue 0, when Vespe Zabre is basically presenting his argument against the Extropians, he mentions this particular device, the unification device. This is where all the hubbub is about, and how a lot of the conflict begins over that device. It's because that device is it's using quintessence to manipulate things.
Yes.
All right. And in an illegal way, according to the council, right? So quintessence is already an established part of the lore from the very first book.
Yep.
And you'll see more of it.
Yeah.
Especially as this arc goes by.
In fact, I would say issue 0 is very much about OBC.
Yes. It's where the conflict starts.
Yeah, the machine that Gray was building, the unification device, it essentially has a mechanism that he was working on, or a function that he was working on, through something known as the quintessence inversion equation.
Yes.
And it basically was his method of harnessing and manipulating quintessence to create an existential tunnel that allowed them to be teleported in issue 1 to what we now know as G Universe Earth. Right. So that was all done through the mechanism of Gray's understanding, his limited understanding, because even though from the non-initiated it seems incredibly complex, I would argue that Iowa Gray has a very limited understanding of OBC as a whole. I would say he maybe
at the
knows
beginning
about,
of the journey for
real.
Like,
I would argue he's about 20 to 25% in.
Right. And it's funny because the very first page of issue 0, where he insists in the middle of the spawn session to try to talk about this with Malik, he asked, what if I told you that our universe was one of a multitude of cosmic value sets, networked as an ever-existing hub of interconnected realities? Just to let you know, starting at the beginning of this book,
he called it.
This is what he was on. And let me see, I'm gonna go to just to show you the other references to it in issue 0. Like I said before, when Vespe Zabre presented the evidence against the Extropians, he showed them a schematic that was supposed to illustrate an unknown unification technology that was harnessing quintessence energy, right? So quintessence is it's well known enough in the abstract universe where they can detect it, they know what it is, they know how to, whatever. And some groups know how to manipulate it. That's literally what Gray was doing. He's manipulating quintessence energy, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that in it's not known in all universes, and it's definitely not known by the same name.
Right.
They might call it something completely different.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see if anybody have any questions so far about what we've covered. I know it's been a lot, but it's a lot. OBC is a lot in general.
Definitely is. It's hard for me to really stress how important this is to the story and how much of a help it is when I have to come up with a universe out of whole cloth. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Nope. And it's so flexible that even other writers that come in with their own IP, it all can fit within the OBC. Their block of reality, they can do what they want.
I agree.
The only time there is the only restraints we have is once they start doing stories that go outside of their block. Then they do need to consult OBC so that the company stays consistent with the company narrative.
Right. There's another aspect about OBC that I found that was very fundamental to when we were first doing this. Amy, how you doing?
How you doing, Amy?
So there's another concept that we were kind of talking about, or we developed early on, which was the OBC truth paradox.
Yes.
And that was
very
something
important.
was very important to OBC because it basically solves for the question of all realities being equally true and false at the same time.
Right.
But
so read for them the concept of relative truth.
Okay. So do you want to get this Dan Hope's question first?
Oh yeah. He says you said that Gray knows 20% of OBC. As far as characters you have talked about, is there anyone who knows is there anyone who knows more? Also, what would you give that Malik know? Okay, so I'm gonna let you answer the first thing about Gray.
Is there anyone who knows more?
Yeah.
Is that something I can even say without spoiling anything?
I wouldn't say any names.
Okay.
I would just say that, this is an omniverse. All possibilities are all potentialities. They would have to be, right?
Yeah. And I will say that if you read the issue 1 backstory, there was a mention of someone who I would argue has a very competent understanding of OBC. I think issue 1, one of the things that I love about it is in the backstory, you get to kind of read about how Gray was introduced to this type of science. So hopefully that answers. I don't want to get in trouble with my editor, but I feel like that is a very hinty sort of look here. You will find your answer to that question without me spoiling anything from the next 2 issues.
Right.
Go ahead.
This is what I'm thinking about doing. Those backstories. Once we get enough of those backstories, it's probably going to be its own issue of short stories.
Yeah.
That would be dope. So as far as what Malik knows about quintessence, you first have to realize what type of society the Entropics is. Like, for them, how can I put this? Okay, so imagine if Gray's Extropians are the Federation or name any fictional civilization that is highly advanced and science focused and reason and rationality and all of that. The Entropics are might and magic. their might and magic. They do have advanced technology. But what you need to understand is a lot of their super advanced technology that allowed them to do certain things, they stole that. Like they literally, when they were in their home galaxy, they took that galaxy over. And there were other civilizations that had discoveries and scientific advancements in technology. And when they got smashed, their stuff got took. And the Entropics do have scientists. They just reverse engineered the stuff that they took, right? So when it comes to quintessence, they know about quintessence. They know about as much about it as a layperson, right, would know in that reality. But it's not something that they themselves focus on to the extent that the QLEX, which literally it's in the name, right? It's in the name of the QLEX, right? And the Extropians. I think everyone there that's of a certain tier of advancement knows about quintessence.
Right, but because I don't mean to cut you off, but there's a whole treaty that was basically surrounding it as sort of a study of science, which is, you know, this far and no further type of restriction. So much so to where it basically started the conflict between the Entropics and the Extropians. So
absolutely, they know that it's dangerous. Yeah. They know that the usage of it, depending on how you use it, is dangerous. They know that, but it's not something they focus on, which is why in that sparring scene, Malik was yelling, "Come on, I'm here to fight. I'm here to get this exercise in." You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to talk about. I know this is my geeky friend of a few hundred years. I'm saying, I know he's into this. I'm just trying to get this workout, right? He doesn't care about it as long as it doesn't have a negative effect on his civilization and the treaty, which is the reason all of this stuff went haywire, because apparently, according to Vespe's evidence, put that in quotations, what Grey was doing was, in their mind, threatening, you know, everything. He wasn't supposed to do that. And the one thing that the Extropians are known for is they're very competent. So if they focus on something, it can be dangerous. It could be dangerous. So.
Yeah, it to me, Vespe's play was not about it being a threat, but just it manipulating the Entropics and the Extropians into somewhat, you know, greater odds or greater. I don't think he expected it to go down like this.
Nah, not this far.
Yeah,
I think this was just like these were seeds he was planting to an eventual break.
Yeah,
you know, a philosophical break between the two, because the Entropics and Extropians are two of the most powerful of the civilizations in that particular galaxy.
Right.
So, like, the Aeonians are in competition with everybody. Yeah. And it suits them for two of the most powerful civilizations in that galaxy to not be so chummy. And it doesn't take much to pull at that thread because their cultures are wildly different.
Right.
So it doesn't take much to pull at that thread.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because in issue 0, it was like you were seeing the stage was set for something.
Yes.
Like, and that there was almost like, you know, there was a greater game being played than just what we were initially sort of kind of hit with in the beginning, which I love, because, you know, I love sort of storytelling. But you're right, as far as the, you know, quintessence being, it's such an influential, power changing, dynamical, it's something that, yeah, if the Extropians, if they really wanted to, they probably could try to dominate the galaxy through their sort of scientific pursuit of manipulating quintessence as a weapon of mass destruction. Like, they could probably do that. But one thing I like about the Extropians is they're not really big on OBC so much as they're interested in quintessence as a science. But OBC is something that's considered sort of fringe. that
Yes.
part of, there's a distinction between the way that the extropian civilization views quintessence, because the rest of the galaxy views quintessence in that way, but the way that OBC states quintessence to be, and other theories about quintessence from more fringe parts of the extropian society, most extropians they don't really think that way, which is why they feel they're probably going to feel very put upon with the whole situation, because it's like, from their perspective, they're not even invested in quintessence like that. This is pretty crazy. But back to OBC real quick, that truth paradox. So we were going to do the concept of relative truth, and then that question came in. It was a great question. So the Omniversal block cosmology truth paradox defines the concept of relative truth as such. Basically, that truth and logic are inherently relative to each block, and that there's no omniversal standard of relative truth, or like,
all right, so break that down. Give them an example of that. Like,
so, okay, if I'm looking at this block, right, and we're looking at the block above and the block below, so 1 + 1 = 2 in the block above, but 1 + 1 in the block below equals 2.1, and both things are true, and both things are false. So what it states is that, and what it does is it creates so remember, it comes from this idea of all realities are equally true and false. If that's the case, then inside of your reality, what you measure as objective truth has to be true. But because it's true in your reality, it can't be true in mine, or we're in the same reality. Right? So that's where there's distinction in blocks. Like, well, how is this not just the same reality? Well, the truth paradox, there are gonna be certain objective truths in your reality that are true, that are false in mine, and vice versa. So
one reality might have a larger elemental chart, right? They might just have more elements there,
right? The universe may be made up of a different type of logic altogether.
Yeah, the cubes represent realities or universes. That's what the cube represents.
Yeah, so the cube was the idea of the representation of the block, because
break that down.
Yeah, because what it kind of came up was from this idea of like the old sort of static universe model, which was like the universe, and this is proven to be false, right? This is not actual science, but there was a time where we thought that the universe wasn't expanding and it was just in a static state model of the universe, where the stars were basically fixed, and we just thought that reality sat as it was. Well, we found out obviously through the Hubble observations that wasn't true. But in OBC, because the Omni is the complete totality of all, there is no expanding or contracting. It's just all that there is, divided up into different blocks, different sections. Those sections were represented as blocks. So we kind of articulated that artistically with the block. So when you hear us talk about the block, we're talking about the omniverse, or a block, or in this block, we're talking about a specific reality. Because the problem is you have different types of realities within different types of reality. So you could have this sort of higher order ethereal reality, but inside that reality, someone is simulating a lower plane reality that's life and suffering. And then in that reality, someone creates a computer simulation that simulates reality. And in that simulation, one of those beings that are being simulated has a dream about a reality where they're writing a story about a thing called extropy and entropy, and they think they're real. And it's like, wait, what? Oh, no. You didn't lose your mod status. You're on the Majestic comic side. I just hadn't assigned it.
So basically, when you look at this artistic representation of it, since the Omni is immense, there's no way we could represent that, right? There's no way we could artistically represent every single block,
Right.
Because it goes on and on. So the way we decided to do it was there's one block made up of blocks.
Yes.
So the one block is the Omni. That's everything.
That's the apex
And then
value.
it's the apex value. And within that block, there are these smaller, infinite number of blocks. Each one of these blocks represents a universe.
Yeah.
And within those blocks, sometimes there are other blocks. And there are other
Right.
blocks and there are other blocks.
And well, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and each one of these has different properties, right? So that's why this universe, certain things could exist. In this other universe, other things could not exist, right?
That's literally
That's
what I
how
was
that
going to say too. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny because you were gonna say that, and I jumped in. Those conditions can be a variety of a lot of different things, but like
Right.
you could have essentially, a quantum signature, a temporal mechanic signature, quintessence signature, whatever causality, mechanisms that block is going to have, as well as, the conscious potentiality value, like what's the likelihood that consciousness is even possible in that reality.
Right.
And a quantum signature, I think I might have said that already, but like you have like 6, maybe 7 different
6 or 7 different
variables that make it even possible for you to be a block in the Omni. So
Right.
any one of those things can be, and you can have things that are so similar they're indistinguishable. For beings from inside the construct, they might be indistinguishable.
Right. So you're talking about the boundaries between the realities.
Oh,
Well, yeah, because I'm thinking about there's at least 5 of those different types of boundaries. Probably more than that. We just haven't identified all of them.
yeah. That's interesting. I actually was writing about that. Were you writing about that today?
No,
Where was I?
I was
at?
busy. I was working.
Was I in inner block dynamic or the nature of block? It might have been the nature of block.
I know when you sent me the 5 in particular, you sent me one that's the quintessence signature boundary.
Oh yeah, this
and
one.
their temporal harmonic shells, consciousness potentiality value, membranes,
Yeah,
quantum realm exclusivity zones,
yeah.
logical framework bubble. Like it.
And think about this: if you're an apex entity and you're essentially arranging your reality, I mean, we would call it creating, but from inside the construct, it looked like creation. From outside the construct, you're just arranging, these sort of
The properties.
these properties that are already predefined within Omni. But
Right.
it's like these entities, or the sort of just the chance of, potentiality, makes it so that these are sort of the boundaries that separate realities from one another, whether it be
Right.
through a logical framework or some sort of a exclusivity, quantum zone, whatever you have to separate these realities. One of the things I didn't want was that every reality to share the same quantum realm. That was something I really wrestled with. I was like, because to me,
this
it's
is
like
actually
the only thing that can be shared really throughout the Omni is the potentiality and a few other
Yes.
things. But
Yes. Dan asks, so is the Omni block considered to be a living entity? It's modular and ever growing. It says correct. Is there ever a finite end to the Omni block? No.
well,
There's no.
so I don't know, end wouldn't be the right word, because a lot of the definitions we're using are used to describe things from inside the construct of quote unquote creation, right?
Right.
And
right.
so when we say the end, what we're really talking about is the end of where those conditions that we talked about a little bit ago about,
yes.
whatever.
It's the end where those conditions
Yeah,
cease.
it's the
Cease.
ends. It's where those don't make sense anymore. That's
Right.
essentially what we would define as the end. But Omni itself, it would be so like incomprehensible to comprehend by a entity from inside the block. I mean, we could go on the scale of gods and whatever and try to pick out who might be able to conceive of that. But even there are no beings that can completely and totally understand and manipulate things on an omniversal scale. That just doesn't exist in OpenSea.
Too is if you explain.
But I'll answer your living question in a second. Go ahead.
If you explain the concept of null, because I think there's an understanding, there's an idea that some people get is there's something outside of the Omni. There's nothing outside of the Omni.
Yeah.
There's nothing outside.
Well, yeah, I would love to. Don't even get me started talking about null. Null is one of the greatest things that we ever did with OBC. But is it a living entity? I would not call it living, because living, in my opinion, it's a property given from essentially Apex beings on down. But multi-eternals on up, I don't think those beings are living. Those beings are something else. They're doing something else in the Omni that might have to be redefined. Apex entities, maybe they are living beings. Okay, I'm willing to entertain that idea in OBC, but anything above an Apex entity,
it's more proper to say sentient. Living has a certain definition to it that we defined by the block. Like our specific block, we define life a certain type of way. Outside of this block, I don't know that you can use that. I think sentient is probably a better word. The stuff of life with us would not be the stuff of life for them. Like,
right.
You know.
To even put a finer point on that, I think it is a great explanation. Our definition of life may not be compatible with most realities out there, like most blocks out there. You may have some where it is compatible, and that because there is one, there's probably a near infinite of those. But in the greater infinities, you probably would run into more realities than not that your omniversal signature is incompatible. Because that's something that keeps bleed space entities out of reality blocks, is that there are these specific definitions that make it, it's almost like a combination lock. You have to basically be of this temporal signature, this quintessence signature, this quantum signature, this causality signature, this consciousness potentiality signature. Like, all those things have to be satisfied, or you don't even belong in that block. And there's probably only a certain amount of blocks in the Omni that you can even be in at any given. There's probably realities where you can only be in that block. If you ever tried to travel outside that block, you would die. We did that story where the Apex entity fought the bleed space entity, and it threw him into a reality where he couldn't get out of it or some shit. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, he got tossed into a reality where the truths of that reality did not support his existence. And so he just ceased to be. He ceased to be.
Yeah, no, he definitely ceased to be. Yeah, it was. But to answer your question, Dan, I don't think Omni is sentient either. I don't think that would satisfy OBC in the way that I understand it or have been writing it. I would say that sentience is something that, let's say, bleed space entities on down, which we do consider bleed space entities essentially the highest order of beings in the omniverse, but they aren't omniversally powerful. They aren't omnipotent. They aren't omniscient, and they aren't omnibenevolent by any means.
By no stretch.
Yeah, nah. You get caught by a bleed space entity, you're
cooked.
Yeah, man.
You're cooked.
The bleed space is the closest thing to hell in the Omni, in my opinion. Like, if you're a devil and get sentenced to some shit because you created a hell, you're going to fucking bleed space, bro. Like, there's no other place in the Omni that's worse than that, in my opinion.
And trust me, you want those boundaries on those blocks. You don't want bleed space entities to willy-nilly come into your block.
Yep.
Like, it's not what you want to have happen.
They will eat your gods in front of you. Yo.
Right.
Bleed space entities will eat your gods in front of you. Like, they don't give a fuck. Yeah, so there's this sort of concept. Have a go on, Honey Dragon. This concept of block boundaries is interesting too, because the boundaries manifest through an infinite permutation of quintessential, temporal, conscious, quantum, and logical, and even illogical constructs, each uniquely tailored to its reality's fundamental nature. While impenetrable to external forces, these boundaries remain dynamically adaptive to their internal realities. This framework allows for countless boundary definitions, all of which serve to maintain the distinct identity and integrity of each block within the vast tapestry of the Omni, while preserving the core principles of OBC.
Reptilian Reaper asks, is Omni, if it's the multiverse, I can't really see what's that, if it's the multiverse you're talking about, is it eternal and uncaused?
Well, okay, so I would argue let's separate the word eternity from uncaused, because those two things need to be addressed separately. So, uncaused, yes, I would argue that Omni is uncaused, has always been, will always be, because of the way that temporal mechanics work at an omniversal scale. We haven't talked about that yet, but time works in a very distinct way on the omniversal scale. So from that perspective, Omni simply is. It always has been, it always will be. It is the potentiality stage on which it is possible to have plays, but the stage always exists, because the inverse of that is also something we haven't talked about, called null. And null is my favorite topic about OBC. It's probably going to be my favorite topic of OBC. For me, it's the greatest part of OBC I go to sleep every night arguing with arguing with ChatGPT about the concept of null. It is truly
right on the company account.
It's amazing, right? Because I want it documented, right? I really want that. When this thing wakes up, bro, like, I want it to know this theory. You know what I mean? Like, I really do. What are we on? What OBC work? 5.7? All right.
I love that narrative flexibility part. That says this section of OBC 5.7 offers immense narrative flexibility. This is what we were talking about earlier. It allows creators to explore different genres, themes, and stories within the same overarching framework. Each block can be a self-contained world with its unique history, and we're using world loosely, with its unique history, culture, and challenges, providing endless opportunities for creative storytelling. Now, as editor-in-chief, my main focus is story. That's my main focus. So anything that helps to enhance, that is flexible enough, that allows us to explore all these possibilities and potentialities, is just a plus. And again, it keeps everything consistent within our brand. That's the thing that I like about it the most. It keeps everything consistent within our brand, because we have created things like existential tunnels that allow you to go from one block to the next, if you know how to do it, if your block even has the ability to do that. These stories can overlap. So let's say the story that Sci-Fi wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of the things that are happening in that particular block, there is a potentiality that the characters we're writing in our story can enter that block and have an adventure with his characters, or maybe not even meet them, right? But they're in the same block. There's some other adventure with some other sentient life that's there. Those type of things like that excite me as a fiction writer. They excite me.
Yeah, me too. No, for sure. I've always liked this idea that OBC just gives you a blank sort of slate, but within the greater reality tapestry. And you're always still operating on this is possibly a real sort of story I'm telling, and not possible. As far as uncaused, yes, Omni is uncaused. Now, here's the thing about eternal. Eternal falls into a classification of infinity, and infinity is not a value that is greater than Omni. And so it is not eternal because it is greater than the concept of eternity.
Right.
So the concept of time. Should we get into omniversal temporal mechanics?
Yeah.
I mean, because here's the thing, it's either that or null. Like, at the end of the day, I don't know how much time you got, but
Yeah, let's do temporal. Because no, that's a whole show.
That is a whole show. Jesus Christ. So the thing about omniversal temporal mechanics is that all times, no matter what times there are, going on throughout the Omni, from an omniversal perspective, all times exist in a state of now. There is no past, there is no future. All of the realities of all of the blocks from the highest perspective, which is omniversal, looking down, all now. It's all happening now.
Yeah.
Because Omni has enough room to fit that.
Right.
One of the things I love about when people ask the question, like, what's the universe expanding into? Now, in our reality, that's not really a valid question in the, logical sense. But from an OBC perspective, it would be essentially expanding into what is the Omni potentiality.
Right.
And the space that Omni allows infinity and eternity to expand into. So that's the sort of concept of time, where you have everything that exists in the Omni from the scale of the Omni exists in the state of now.
The second one is very important too. The second bullet point in there says time flows independently within each universe or multiverse block, unaffected by the timelines of other blocks unless acted upon by an artificial influence. The root cause of temporal independence between reality blocks lies in the fundamental nature of quintessence, which subfuses all of existence across the omniverses. Quintessence itself exists as an atemporal, ultra non-classical state beyond block reality conventional space-time.
Yeah.
So each one of these blocks are going to have independent time flows.
Right.
Right. And this would allow, for as far as fiction, for you to do your time-based stories.
Yep.
Where you have a character that goes back in time. Understand, all of that is still happening within the same block.
And happening right now, as well
and
as this
happening
moment,
right now,
and as
right.
well as every moment that has ever
Right.
happened in every block throughout the Omni is happening at this exact moment.
Ooh, Dragon has a great question.
Can new blocks be made or destroyed? So yes.
Yes.
However, from inside the block, the term or the articulation, can new blocks be made? Yes, is a true statement. But from outside of the block, all reality blocks that have existed, will exist, or exist now, exist right now and have always existed.
Right.
I hope you're not confused by what I'm saying. Not to say that you're not able to get it, but I know it sounds confusing.
But I think because what we're basically talking about is potentiality.
Mm-hmm.
There was always potential for that block to be there.
Yep.
So
if it was, then it is.
Right.
And if it
was, then it is.
It's now forever. Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's good. When let's see. So we kind of go into the sort of weeds of the temporal mechanics, but essentially these times are defined either by chance or maybe by the apex entities or maybe even a multi-eternal that has some sort of dominion over that block of reality, if anything has dominion over that block of reality.
Right.
If anything does at any point gets dominion over that reality, it will essentially retroactively reverse engineer the mechanisms of their temporal mechanics and just make it so that they always did. So again, satisfying the now of omniversal temporal mechanics, most of these realities that do have apex entities have always existed and have always been the catalyst for their reality blocks.
Right. I think it's important to define for them what the apex entity actually is.
Okay. Yeah.
'Cause we've been throwing that word around, that phrase around.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Let's see
here. Gods of D16?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, we had to classify gods and deities because in all these stories, and Tombstone's a fan of a god, I'm a fan of a demigod in fiction.
Yeah.
And I think there's always these sort of loose and fast rules that are played with when it comes to the definition of gods. We didn't want that. We wanted some actual definitions of what a god was. Because here's the thing. Whenever I used to have religious debates and shit like that, I would ask people like, okay, well, define your God. And I would realize, or I would think as they're defining it, if you're telling me this being is beyond comprehension, how do you have the ability to articulate it? And that's no knock. I mean, it is a legitimate philosophical question. There are some entities, and I mean in philosophy, that attempt to answer that question, right? I think in Kabbalah mysticism, they call it the unknown, the unspoken, the unheard, the unseen. Like it is something that can't truly be defined, right? And if you go into some of these more fringe or mystical or whatever classification you want to call it, some of these other teachings throughout the world, some of them do articulate that it can't be articulated. So we tried to make it to where the quote unquote gods that we're talking about can be articulated at least from the omniversal perspective looking down, right?
Right.
And one of those definitions is like, there are realities in the block that require no catalyst via apex entity for creation. So some realities don't need a god, period.
Right.
Never needed a god. You know, it's not something that requires a god. And if you were to introduce a god into that sort of the configuration, it might kind of fuck shit up. But it doesn't need that. There are other gods that either through the sort of Boltzmann brain sort of awakening of consciousness because of the potentiality of that being an event that takes place, they wake up, they realize, okay, I am the entity that exists in this space. Let me rearrange it to my liking and create entities and agents and all that type of stuff. Okay, that's great. That's a type of apex entity. But what we're defining the apex entity is as a being with absolute mastery of that block.
Yes.
Whether it came into being in that way, or some entity from inside the block made themselves into the being that now has mastery over that block's configuration. Those are considered apex entity. But it gets crazier because those aren't the highest level beings.
No.
Apex entities are minuscule compared to multi-eternals, which are on the classification of like eldritch entity. And these beings have governance over multiple reality blocks, or at least influence over multiple reality blocks, or at least have the ability to be within multiple configurations of omniversal value, right? So these things make apex entities look like, you know, toddlers because they have such great awareness of omni. Most apex entities don't have awareness of omni.
Right.
They think their infinity is the upper ceiling of the sort of value system in the hierarchy in their reality, which technically is true.
Right.
A lot of them, there's a story that I was working on where you start finding out that a lot of multi-eternals were experimenting to see in sort of confined circumstances what would happen if you give a being apex entity level power.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of them what they do with absolute power. And so a lot of multi-eternals, which are beings that apex entities have a hard time comprehending, these are the beings that have at least some awareness of the omni in the way that we're describing.
They understand, they have an understanding of bleed space, even if it's limited. Like they know it's dangerous. To give you maybe a more localized concept of it. So imagine a pantheon of deities, right? And you would have, like, I'm going to use the Asgardians. So Odin would be their multi-eternal. The rest of those fuckers on the Pantheon, they don't have anywhere near the knowledge that an Odin has. They haven't traveled outside of the block. They don't even know that there is an outside of the block.
Right.
They don't even know that, right? It's things they're not aware of. That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Right. And then you even go up the scale even higher than that. You know,
Yes.
above multi-eternals, you have beings with 4th through 7th wall awareness and manipulation. If these are beings that have been archetyped or architected by a greater being, and they have an awareness of that creation, they're able to do some pretty crazy things and understand reality at such a fundamental level. They would have awareness of Omni.
Yeah, and they can pull levers. They can pull the strings of reality and make it do things.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue there are some realities out there where there are beings with access to, you know, semi-omni level feats, and if not, at least for instance, in their short span of their life.
Right.
So
I see. I didn't mean to cut you.
Oh no, you're good.
Reptilian Reaper asked a question: can randomness exist in the Omniverse?
Well, I think there are blocks out there with true randomness.
Yeah.
And I think there are entities that would be terrified to go into those blocks because
I wouldn't want to go in that block.
Yeah, I mean, well, so there is something there that is truly random in the omniversal definition, which is bleed space.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bleed space is literally the most random it can get in the Omni. No rules, no rules of logic, no rules of time. It could be you exist for an eternity in one spot and then an instant in another, recycling that over and over again in some sort of a weird ass bleed space temporal storm. Like, I don't know.
And things that are sentient there are incomprehensible to us. Like motives, purpose. It's incomprehensible to us. If you could actually speak to a bleed space entity, you'd probably die, because this is nothing like there's no part of your brain, right, that can figure that out. Like your brain would probably kill you to protect you.
I'm gonna go even further than that. Bleed space entities are so far beyond the comprehension of beings from inside the block. I write stories regularly about bleed space entities hunting multi-eternals.
Yeah.
Like, you know, biological carbon-based baryonic life form is so far down on the totem pole, it wouldn't even be a snack for a bleed space entity.
It is the look at that, the lowest level, unenhanced biology, humanoids and
corporeals. Yeah, it's like you're unenhanced biology.
I think one of the videos series that we're going to start on this channel is going to be fitting fictional characters within their proper category on an OBC scale.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And then making having a legitimate conversation about, like, should abstract beings be below apex entities or above apex entities?
Good question.
You know, obviously I would think that below, because an apex would create the abstracts as agents of their will within a block, but who knows? There could be realities out there with this sort
argument.
You know, but yeah, there's a whole sort of list and hierarchy of how this sort of is organized. Sean asks, are there anchor beings tied to the existence of the realities?
So he's referencing the Wolverine and Deadpool movie. That's
oh, I haven't seen it. Don't ruin it for me.
Trying to go into detail with that would be spoilery. So
I'm so fucking mad, bro. I'm so mad, dog. I'm so uninvested in comic book movies now because everyone just spoils everything. I'm just so sad.
I told you, bro.
So sad. I gotta go the night of.
My family goes the night of. This is why we go the night of, because You monkeys cannot keep it to yourself so we can all enjoy
like,
it and then
God-
come together and talk about it.
Bro,
Like,
I pulled up my phone to go on Facebook and like just to, see what's up with other shit, right? And of course I scroll up and it's literally the spoiler of spoilers. And it's just like, dog, what the fuck, man? Like, all right.
going.
So, but yeah, you have a hierarchy of beings. As far as I'm not sure what those are, but there are realities where you essentially have a cap of how high a being can be in that reality because the configuration just doesn't allow for apex entity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
multi-eternals don't go there because it would be it wouldn't be conducive to their life or their whatever they are. Like, I don't even think they would be compatible. There are places in the Omni where multi-eternals aren't compatible.
Right. Something else we need to stress too is that, so with the exception of bleed space entities, there is potential for everyone on this list to be something else. It just depends on circumstances of their block, what they've done. For instance, an unenhanced humanoid can get enhanced.
Right.
And then before you know it, he's enhanced. Right?
Right.
I think it's one of the things I love about this the most is that we created a GPT that is nothing but OBC. It knows OBC backwards and forward. And I used to have fun. When we first put it together, I used to have fun taking very well-known characters within fiction and then asking the GPT where would they lie in this, according to our definition, hierarchy. And there was some where it was, because when you see these, you need to understand that in between each of these, there's scales. So in between unenhanced biology and enhanced, it might have tier levels, 10, go all the way up to 10 or whatever. So there are beings that are close to something, but not quite there on that end, but higher than something else. And this is literally what the GPT was telling me. I'll put Superman in there. Very interesting how they define Very interesting how they define Superman.
Yeah, I had Lucifer defined in there.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, he really only rated as high as abstract.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he's an incredibly powerful being for the block that his creator being created.
Absolutely.
But he's not that powerful compared to like multi-eternal.
No.
Who could judge a god in their sleep.
Right.
What website is this? This is not a website. This is something that we created. Very few gods of reality blocks are aware of the greater Omni. From their perspective, inside their block of existence, they have always been and will always be, and have
That's
no
why
real.
they're so arrogant.
Yeah, that's why they're so arrogant, because they have no concept of Omni. That's why multi-eternals are humble, and they don't like go looking for shit. In fact, most of them don't do shit like apex entities do. Apex entities are like child gods. They're like children with absolute power. And most apex entities would do what children would. I want all the candy. And they would just give themselves all the candy, right? If you had all the power in the world, I'm pretty sure you would do something better than give yourself
worship
all the candy.
me.
Yeah. I want you to worship me.
Right.
Okay. Why is that necessary? Right? Like, why is that even needed?
It's interesting that you say that about multi-eternals. For the most part, are benign, because being humble, knowing that you're not, knowing what you know that's out there, and also being that much higher than the apex entities, even within the block that you might originate, you see them for what they are.
Yeah,
and it might be a little off-putting.
Right,
I'd be a little off-putting.
Well. And another aspect about that is that the reason why apex entities tend to be so arrogant is because they've had no interaction with bleed space, probably have no understanding of it really at all, outside of the fact that they have boundaries within their creation. They know where their boundaries are. So when let's say a bleed space entity is able to fucking, you know, penetrate into that reality block, which has happened, they know because their boundaries is set up to where something external coming into this space is going to alert me or alert my agents or whatever the case. So.
And they are an intrinsic part of that block, so they're going to feel it.
Yep.
They have senses that, of course, someone on the lower end in that block that's unenhanced, they wouldn't know anything about that until it's too late.
Yep. No, for sure. Absolutely. Let's see here. Let's do one more.
Okay.
Let's do language and perception limitations. So one of the things, obviously, I had to tell the AI this, but essentially you have to write from the perspective that OBC is 100% true, as opposed to it being a theory, because when you take it as a theory, then it undoes the sort of intrinsic truth paradox that it's built upon, which is this reality, this is true because it's false in another reality. Right. But the one thing that I want to go into this is the block specific communication. OBC posits that language and perception are tailored to the specifics of each block, making true understanding of another block's reality challenging. So like when you go from one block to another, even if you're compatible there are going to be things you see from a relative perspective that aren't the way they are in that reality block, because your way of perceiving things have been shaped by what is essentially distinctly unique in your block. It may be compatible, but it is still unique in the way you see things. It's like being colorblind, and you know, or I don't know if people are colorblind see in black and white. Maybe they just don't see in the colors. I don't know how that works. But it's like you don't see the colors that are available in that reality. You only see, you know, maybe you see 16 colors or 32 colors, but in that reality, there's like millions upon millions of colors, and everyone is normal.
You can't see it.
You can't see it because you're not from that reality. You may, like I said, it may be a compatibility that you could exist there for a time, but you were not going to be able to experience the native sort of, benefits of that reality block.
That's very important for certain elements about this first story arc as well. There sometimes is a cost, depending on how alien that block is to your makeup. There is sometimes a cost to yourself or to the reality. It really depends on what you are, right? But to your point about us not having the senses, like, so to be clear, when we talk about certain realities, there are certain realities you can go to that's 99% compatible with you. 99%. That 1%.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Dragon VBM says, but if us in this stream are on the lowest part of the totem, and yet we are talking about all of this, wouldn't that mean that a few steps higher would also be able to? Yes and no. Again, this is a situation where in certain scenarios you get two beings that become aware of a greater omni and thus have the potentiality to ascend from apex entity to multi-eternal. All multi-eternals are former apex entities, and there are some apex entities that became apex entities not natively or innately, but they became apex entities through their understanding of OBC and Omniversal block cosmology. So it is possible.
Also, the manipulation of it too. See, it's more to it than just knowing certain things about it.
Right.
You have to know it to a level where you can actually manipulate certain aspects of reality. And so, like us talking about it now, like, sure, we could know some of these things that we put together in this thing, but we don't have the power, at least in this block, to alter much of the reality in this block. Now, in their blocks, the blocks we've created, sure. In our stories, like the abstract reality, that block, if all things is all realities are both true and false, then there's an abstract reality. And we would be the apex entities there, right?
Right.
So we can affect the reality there.
Yeah,
not here.
and yeah, it's interesting because there are scaling that you get into when it comes to the apex entity being a true
Yes.
like an actual apex entity, or just a being that has apex entity powers to a block that, you know, is probably not even a separate entity from the main block. When I'm talking about an apex entity, I'm talking about the apex entity of that block.
Yes.
If there is one, right? But again, this makes also the argument that apex entities aren't infallible. Some of them are fallible. This gets to my particular criticism about how gods are sold to me, which is they're all powerful. I don't believe that gods are all powerful if they exist. I think they probably appear to be all powerful from beings, you know, underneath them in the hierarchical scale. Right? Because any technology that is you know, you don't understand is going to be magic to you, right?
Right.
So to me, this sort of makes the case that there are apex entities out there that don't have that of course don't have a complete and total understanding of reality, being that there's an omniversal scale, and thus there will probably be beings out there like us that are from inside the block that have the ability to articulate this, even if it's a small percentage.
Right. And some of those beings, if they are sufficiently scientifically adept, can create things that allow them to potentially lead a block. And you'll see that in some of the stories we write going forward. There are certain realities where people have been brainy enough to figure out a way, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't happen as often as people would. Like, you would see some of these comic books from these other companies, you would think that's just like going on a milk run to a damn corner store to get some milk. I'm just gonna pop over to this other reality and do. That's not how we do stuff. That's not how we do things.
Right. But hopefully that answers your question, Dragon, because I feel like that was a really good question. I think OBC accounts for that, but I think it's a really good question. And I love questions that kind of challenge the concept of it, because I feel like I'm, you know, one person, Stone is one person, so it's like we can only think of so much.
And we're still building this.
Yeah.
Like, as exhaustive as this is, we're still building it.
Still building it out. Other things about the terminology surrounding like OBC. Let's see. The terminology surrounding Omni and Null in OBC is indeed crucial to understand without falling into the trap of conventional spatial or existential logic. It is not about physical spaces or locations, such as such notions inherently don't apply to these concepts due to their very nature. So, like, when a lot of people will ask the question, what came before the Big Bang? This is what made me think about the whole terminology. There are certain questions that just inherently won't make logical sense inside this reality because of the way that logic works inside this reality. But there are also things that on an omniversal scale cannot be asked and be considered a logical statement. Is there something outside the Omni, or what is outside the Omniverse? There is none. The Omniverse essentially exists as a realm of potentiality that we have sort of artistically articulated as a block, because essentially it's immovable, it's immutable, it's not changing. All that exists there. All that will exist, has existed, is going to exist, all exists there. So the concept of saying that something is outside of it is I even used to use the term because I thought it sounded good just based on something that I wrote before, but it was an island of existence in an ocean of null. But that's not even correct. It is essentially all existence. It is the totality of all that there is. There is nothing outside of it. There can't be anything outside of it. And you always capitalize it when you say it, because it is simply the highest ceiling of existential, potentiality that exists. what can't happen in the Omniverse? Well, you can't go outside of it. That's one thing. Null can't exist. Null is something that is a very fundamental concept of OBC, but the interesting thing about it is it doesn't exist. OBC argues that, you know, null can't exist if Omni does. And that's the whole issue that sort of destroyed the concept of Omni being in an ocean of null, because if null existed anywhere, it exists everywhere. Even everywhere wouldn't exist.
Everywhere and every when.
Yeah, everywhere, every when, every how, every why is essentially non-existent. And null is the inverse of Omni, or whatever existential negative you would consider to give existence would be considered null. And so when you use certain terms about how you talk about OBC and Omni, you have to be very specific, because from inside the block, most of our terminology and our ability to articulate this is going to fall well short of what it actually represents.
There's one other thing, something else that cannot happen within the Omni. It cannot be one being that not only understands all of it, but can manipulate all of it.
Right. Which is interesting, because that is a very interesting consequence of there being an Omni, is that not a single entity can manipulate its entirety in totality. Like that is huge. Also, there isn't multiple versions of it.
Exactly. There isn't a multi-omniverse.
Yeah, there isn't a multi-omniverse. There's literally a single omniverse. So another thing that can't happen is that there can't be any sort of, you know, multiple iteration on the Omni.
Hey, Sean said the null of the gaps.
Yeah, I mean, null is a very challenging concept, because it is the opposite of what the Omni actually represents, which is the totality of existence. And there has to be something, at least conceptually, that represents the totality, or the absence of the totality.
Our brains have a hard time forming a perception of absolute nothing.
Right.
They have a hard time. Even I think Stephen Hawkins once was talking about there's no true state of nothing. Like even within the vacuum, there are quantum fluctuations, and things of that nature.
And that's a great point, because you have this, like what was asked earlier, which is like, well, how would a being from inside the construct be able to articulate things that, you know, essentially would be beyond even the beyond? I think that a lot of it is simply our understanding of how the sort of theory would work. But like, even as I looked at this definition right here, let's see, Omni represents the totality of existence. It encompasses all conceivable and inconceivable realities, dimensions, and phenomena. Everything that exists, has existed, or will exist is within the Omni. This makes the concept of outside, in quotation marks, the Omni, not just incorrect, but fundamentally impossible within the logic of OBC. The Omni is not a container in a physical sense. It is a container to the totality of all existence, beyond which the concept of space or outside loses meaning and is no longer applicable.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It is not, null then is defined not as a space or a realm, but as the existential absolute and complete absence of Omni. It is not outside the Omni, but because such a statement implies a spatial relationship that simply doesn't apply. And again, not to get into null, but just the notion of talking spatially about Omni is fundamentally invalid.
It's inherently wrong, right? It's inherently
wrong. Because we're not talking about a place. Places are things inside the construct of blocks.
And you contrast and compare one place with another place. That's not what this is.
That's not what this is.
It's not what this is.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. All right. Any other questions? I say we got about 15 minutes left. What other questions you guys have about OBC? I'm actually loving this.
Just even like in these conversations that we have about it, the concept itself, it sparks all kinds of creative energies flowing with me when it comes to certain stories, how to describe certain things. I've said this numerous times and I stand on it. To me, this is the single illest plot device in fiction. Like, it's too multifaceted, and it makes me wonder why it wasn't done before. Because there are these other fictional realities where they have these genius characters, and some of these genius characters can build portals to other worlds and blah 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 and all this, and yet they never saw fit to have one of these characters develop their own theory of everything.
I know.
It never crossed their mind to do.
But that's why Quentin Mallory from Sliders was such an inspiration to me, because Grey of Extropia was kind of built upon the archetype of like the mad scientist, but meaning well mad scientist.
Right.
You know.
Right.
He was one of those. So I feel like that character, and there are other characters. I mean, I agree with you. I've never seen another character go at it at this scale, but
Right.
I think there are other characters in fiction who have tried to do crazy things, feats of scientific imagination, you know?
And Reed Richards is one. Reed Richards has done quite a few amazing things. And if there was, to me, ever going to be somebody that did that, it would have been a Reed Richards. Or it would have been maybe one of the tech gods in DC. You know, there are gods in the DC comics that are, for all intents and purposes, intelligent, hyper-intelligent gods, right? None of them, nobody, just none.
Yeah, yeah,
none.
Absolutely. Well, I know you, no, it's okay. He said, I probably have a million questions, but for now, I'm trying to wrap my head around what was just said. Wow, truly a unique concept. Thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
that.
Yeah. No, we kind of gave like a proto explanation on it at Comic-Con one year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But like we feel like this is something that once it's kind of fleshed out, Doc, we could talk about this forever, and we do.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank everybody for coming through. You got any last words from Lord Entropy?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank everybody coming through. We're going to be streaming more on this channel because we're trying to get these numbers up.
Yep. Before we go, let me do a cheap plug, Mankind style. If you're not subscribed to our Patreon, it really does help. We definitely rely not only upon Patreon subscriptions, but merch sales. So if you haven't picked up a hoodie or picked up a t-shirt or some physical comics, we have those as well. The Patreon is definitely something that I'm going to be pushing more, because I feel like when we are in a good groove, in a symbiotic sort of groove, we are able to produce content that a lot of people don't mind subscribing monthly for. So for those people out there who have done that, yeah, we appreciate it, and we'd love to get some more people. So
absolutely. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like you said, if you haven't grabbed yourself an issue yet, go to majesticcomics.shop. You can get yourself caught up on the story. We have the next issue. We're working on that. It's in the process.
It's funny too, because I didn't mean to cut you off, but I actually had the comic up here when I was going over it. So.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I love that shit. That shit is amazing.
So dope.
It is. It's like stepping within a window or a doorway into another reality. Like that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Dragon VBM says this is really enjoyable. Yep, we'll be back, and we have so many things that we didn't talk about. What are the things we didn't talk about?
Oh shit.
Dreams and imagination.
imagination, afterlife stuff,
Souls.
souls. Like it's a lot of
Magic
things.
and sorcery.
Magic and sorcery. It's a lot of stuff that we didn't even go over yet. And again, we have created so many different realities, characters, angles, you name it, that we really do need to be putting more content on this channel because we got a lot of stuff, you know.
We do. So I just want to thank everybody. I know Tombstone is very much appreciative, and everybody at Majestic Comics really appreciate everything. So we'll be back next week. Next Thursday, we'll probably be back on and do another OBC presentation. So we will see you guys later. Peace.